One incredibly annoying thing that I've noticed with League of Legends throughout the years is that Riot has started to put in more and more comeback mechanics in the game, which just kind of waters down the entire experience, and it truly doesn't reward good players for being good. Now, of course, when everyone thinks of comeback mechanics in League of Legends, they're first going to think of bounties, right? That's the thing that obviously stands out because it's kind of in the name with bounties and giving back money. And essentially what it does is it rewards players for being bad and cashing in on players that are, quote unquote, better than them. And I think the reason why Riot have done, well, I know why Riot has done this, is because it allows the losing team to have hope and essentially have fun, right? There's like a gold bounty that you see, 500 gold or whatever next to a name, and you think, oh, okay, that's our way back into the game. There's still a way for me to win this game. And on top of that, it makes it quite clear and evident because there's a huge sack of money next to that name. So it kind of gives you an objective and it gives you a little mini game inside of the game in order to kind of up the stakes and have a win condition, so to speak. But I think one thing that bounties do that a lot of people are underestimating is essentially what it does is it gives you the kind of illusion that you can win the game or whatnot, which to some extent it is true, but it's also through kind of a system called a near miss. And near misses are what is used in the gambling industry. I highly recommend a documentary called Ka-Ching, and it has I think Pokey is in the title. Now, Pokey is not your Pokemon. Pokies are a gambling casino, I guess, in Australia. And they're like a slot machine that, you would see in Las Vegas or something. And what those systems have done is they've created a reel on the screen, how all the flashing numbers and shit go around. And they will mathematically put in near misses to where, it'll say like bar, and chicken egg or some shit, right? And you'll be like, damn, if only I got another bar, like I could have cashed in. I'm going to go again. I was pretty close. And so people have taken that near miss mechanic from gambling and put it into things like video games. And this is quite evident within Riot games as well, or League of Legends. I previously spoke about in multiple different videos and different articles even about Riot Lite and how they had basically a team of psychologists, and they still do have a team of psychologists or behavioral scientists that give their input on how to make the game more addictive. And this is obviously one of those mechanics to make people play longer and allow kind of a hook to where, oh, it's a near miss of, hey, there was a bounty or there is a bounty. Maybe we get a couple bounties, but then we still lose and, shit, like maybe next time. And my teammates were just fucking bad. Maybe I'll just play again, right? Another mechanic that is heavily comeback mechanic that I think a lot of people have forgotten, and I don't hear any pro analysts or any people from, the League of Legends fan community talk about it, which is that in patch 12.22, junglers deal 20% more damage to camps on their own side. So essentially what this did was it made it to where invades were less worth it for, being a jungler. So if you invade on the enemy jungler, now you're dealing, 20% less damage. And well, in all reality, it's just you lose that extra 20% that you would have gotten, by doing it on your own camps. So that means that you always do your own side faster than you do by invading and trying to steal a camp. So this means basically that if you do go for an invade, you better make sure that you're actually invading and you're not going to get caught inside of there and you're going to make it out and make it back to your own camps, right? So it's a way more, I guess you have to go down the decision tree of do you want to invade or not. more concretely, right? Like you can't just do it willy-nilly for, like invading. And back in the day, like you could invade, obviously back in season 2, Diamond Procs had kind of invented invading, so to speak. And that was one of the main tactics that you would use then to get ahead in the jungle. Well, now you can't really do that anymore. It's not really that effective, all the time, right? Like the decision tree isn't always, can you invade? Yes, go invade, right? So that's one of the big ways that Riot have introduced a comeback mechanic of, well, the enemy can't now take your jungle camp, so therefore, you're kind of safe and you can farm your own jungle in peace. Now, I do want to give some credence to Riot and say, look, League of Legends is inherently a snowball-y game, right? And I don't think you can take that out of the game necessarily just because of the nature of League of Legends itself. I mean, just in items are scaling, right? They're a multiplicative stat. Like even the biggest instance that you could look towards is obviously crit items, right? Because they are a percentage, they obviously stack up. So, 80%, you're 80% likely to crit versus 20%, obviously. So League of Legends has always been a very snowball-y game, and then there's the limitation of items, which is like this hard cap, I guess, on the snowball mechanic, as it were, within League of Legends, because generally the, maximum way to snowball in League of Legends itself is through items. So once you have a item cap, right, 6 items within your item slots, that means you've hit the hard cap of what it is to snowball. Even though there are other ways to snowball, of course, vision control is another snowball mechanic within League of Legends, to where it's easier to maintain vision control because, say if you take the mid turret, right, that means you have more vision control or more opportunities to get vision control, and it's harder for the enemy team to then combat that vision control, right? So it's kind of a different snowball mechanic within the game to deal with fog of war. And especially considering that the lane minions or the towers themselves give vision as well too in the fog of war. But League of Legends itself is super snowball-y, and on top of that, when you yourself get a snowball or a lead, that then means that you can transfer it to your other teammates, which then kind of morphs the snowball so that it's not just you necessarily. And then, of course, there's one very underrated snowball mechanic, which is the catch-up XP for the lowest level player on, your team or in the entire game. The person who is the lowest level on the map suddenly gets more XP for the minions that are dying around them, or if they kill jungle camps, etc. So there's just catch-up mechanics everywhere in League of Legends, and you can't necessarily fully blame Riot necessarily, but I would like to go towards another game that has catch-up mechanics that aren't too bonkers or out of control, which is Counter-Strike Go. So if you don't know, Counter-Strike Go, they have a loss bonus. So as you guys know, after each, you kill the enemy or you plant the bomb and you successfully detonate the bomb or you defuse the bomb, the round is over. And then the next round starts. You get to carry over your guns or whatever if you didn't die that round. But it's also, you get a loss bonus of $1,400 plus $500 extra each time you lose an additional round. So if you lose, I think it's for the first round, you get $500 extra dollars. For the second round, you get $1,000 extra dollars, so on and so forth, right? Plus the $1,400 initially. So Counter-Strike does have a kind of snowball or anti-snowball mechanic, and the fact that obviously if you're winning more in Counter-Strike, you get to keep your guns because your guys are alive. So then, you all have M4s and armor, and maybe you have defuse kits and ops and shit like that versus, someone that has pistols or something. Counter-Strike would obviously suck if there wasn't some anti-snowball mechanic, some comeback mechanic. But Counter-Strike is different because, like I said, they have largely a round system, which prevents snowballing for the most part to begin with, right? So they don't need that much comeback mechanics, as it were. But my big problem with League of Legends is that essentially comeback mechanics don't reward mastery for the game, because they introduce a ton more variance within the game. So if you essentially get penalized with a bounty for being too good at the game, and then suddenly you give a shutdown gold, whether that is through your own fault, or maybe it's your teammates don't play around you, maybe you can't play as optimally as you would like, so then you have to play suboptimally because your teammates aren't really protecting you or don't know the win condition, which is essentially you, right? Maybe you have 1,000 gold bounty on your head, so then you then actually become the win condition. But oftentimes, as we know within solo queue, people don't like to play around other people. They want to be the star. They want to be the carry of the entire team, right? So essentially, League of Legends, as they introduce more and more comeback mechanics, they don't reward a overall mastery of the game, right? Like you would say, for instance, oh, well, they kind of are rewarding mastery for the game, because that means the less that you fuck up, that means the person that fucks up the least should actually theoretically rise through the ranks and be very good at the game, etc. But in fact, it introduces more variance, because your teammates need to be around you and help you the most, because obviously the 5 enemy teams have a objective that literally says, hey, this person is worth a ton of gold. So it requires both teams to function around that specific goal. Both, your allies, if you have the bounty, and then the enemy team to try and take your bounty. So it just inherently doesn't reward mastery for that one particular player, and they have to rely more and more on their teammates. And as you'll notice, League of Legends itself has become more and more of a team game. And another huge and very big problem that I have with League as a game entirely is the Elder Drake. I do not fucking like the Elder Drake. I think it needs to be taken out the game. It is a shit mechanic, and it makes it to where it's essentially a coin flip a lot of the times, because one team will try and go for Elder Drake, because they've been stacking Drakes because they've been winning the fucking game, and they get Soul, for instance, but then Elder Drake comes up, and suddenly that's a win condition for both of the teams because it's a huge injection of gold. I think it's something like Elder Drake is worth like 13,000 or 15,000 K worth of gold and stats. So essentially the team that gets it is suddenly ahead, right? No matter what, because, no one's ahead 13,000 gold, without the Elder Drake and not winning the game already, right? But Elder Drake is essentially this Hail Mary, right? If you don't know, in football, there's a play called Hail Mary where essentially like all of the running backs and wide receivers and like offensive linemen and shit just run out into the field, and the quarterback is basically sitting there a little bit defenseless, but he's able to throw to multiple different people, and he just kind of throws it wide and hopes somebody catches it. That's essentially what an Elder Drake is it's introducing an RNG mechanic into the game and allows a coin flip play to happen. And oftentimes what happens is the team that gets the smite ends up winning the fucking game. And it's very unfortunate. And in pro play, it's less so, of course, because teams are more coordinated and they'll hold off on taking the Drake, and, they'll get it to maybe half HP and bait the enemy in. But in solo queue, it's totally a fucking coin flip. And I know that Riot wanted to introduce this mechanic into the game because it's essentially a end game state, right? It's saying the game is taking too fucking long. We want you guys to end the game. We don't want a game to drag out to 40 or 50 minutes. We want the fucking game to be over so that you can get into the next game and maybe you can play more, right? Instead of just ending your gaming session after only one game. So I know why Riot introduced it. It's essentially to try and get more game time out of players, right? Because theoretically, you could play one game for 50 minutes, or you could get into another game and it would probably be like 70 minutes total, right, out of 2 games versus 1 game would be, 50 minutes or 45 minutes or something. But I think the bullshit thing about how League of Legends, I guess, is going, besides the comeback mechanics, as it were, is essentially they're trying to get different RNG ways and different ways to make the player base feel good. And you can already see this in just the kind of mini wins, I would like to call them, within the League of Legends sphere, as it were. First of all, champion mastery, that's another little win, because every time that you play after a game, it shows like, oh, you got an S or something in the game, right? That's a little reward. Even if you didn't win the game, at least you get a champion mastery that says, oh, I got an S. And that makes you feel good even if you lost the game. Same thing with missions, right? Missions are, the little things of like, hey, if you place 3 wards or something, you get a XP bar that goes for your ward placing mastery or whatever. Or if you get 10 kills this match, you get a reward for your missions or whatnot. And I even think it gives you a little bit of blue essence or something. And then, of course, they have the leveling progression, which, every time that you play a game, you get XP. And then at the very end, as you level up, you get a level up capsule or something, right? So even if you lost the game, you could still potentially get a capsule, which is like a little mini win for you, right? It kind of softens the blow, as it were. But I think that is one way to take away from like, okay, we don't need to actually give them a real win, like 20 LP or something. We could just give them one of these, fake wins or whatnot. And I think also too, there's the idea of a sunken cost of time, right? Because when you introduce more and more comeback mechanics into any game, right? And this is just psychology itself, right? It feels less of a sunken cost of time if you're very close to winning, right? Because that is to say, oh, okay, if we didn't fuck up on this very last play here, if we didn't fuck up at Elder Drake, we would have actually won the game, right? So you feel like it's not entirely a sunken cost because you've been so close to winning the game. That means that maybe theoretically next game you could win the game, versus if you get completely shut out of a game, right? And it's, 10 minutes in and you're just getting fucking stomped, and that you have to endure another, call it 12 minutes, right? For the enemy to stomp you, take all the outer turrets, then go to Baron at 20 minutes, take the Baron, and then go for the ending game push. Like, you feel like that's a sunken cost because you already know that you're losing the game. Your teammates don't want to fucking surrender, etc., right? So it's just complete sunken loss. And that's something that Riot and Riot engineers want to avoid. And that is also additionally considering that Riot's worst enemy in the League of Legends, call it game or mechanics, is the surrender button. Riot do not want you to fucking surrender, which is also why they've been so opposed to lowering the surrender rate oftentimes, right? They were opposed to lowering the surrender rate at 15 minutes. They totally took that off the board for the longest time. And then it was, okay, well, you have to have a unanimous vote of 5 people in order to surrender at 15 minutes. And then they lowered it down to, I think it's 4 people now. But Riot want to have the surrender rate be as low as possible, because technically, if you think about what the surrender actually is, it means that I am not having fun losing the game oftentimes, right? Other times it's I'm so fucking tilted because, we fucked up on a play here or something that I don't think we deserve to win, right? It's one of those pouty moves that kids like to do in the game, right? I don't know why I'm flaming the fuck out of kids, because it's literally a video game, but I don't know, get fucking good, kids. But anyways, the surrender vote is actually, it's a metric of satisfaction, right? It is to say, how satisfying is this game currently, even if I'm losing? Because you have to remember, League of Legends is a 5v5 game. So theoretically, you would want all 10 people to be happy playing the game, no matter what the game state is. And that's why actually Riot has introduced so many comeback mechanics. Now, in pro play, and this is the biggest fucking gripe that I have too, along with this, is that because Riot refused to make two different versions of the fucking game, of a pro play version and a pleb version, that means we all gotta play the same fucking game, and I gotta watch these shitty games with all these terrible comeback mechanics. And what it does in pro play is it punishes imperfect teams really hard, which I think is kind of shitty because, you know, you don't get to see these crazy stomps or anything, even if there are some little imperfections within the game, which then means that all the teams need to, or rather the top teams need to play perfectly and in sync with all the players themselves, right? So it's almost as though there can't really be that many outstanding players. You know, we'll get some flickers here, we'll get Knight, or we'll get Chovy, you know, or we'll still have some faker pop-offs and stuff. But in all reality, I don't really think that a lot of players are carrying the game as consistently by themselves as was in the past. And I think one big thing in which Riot has done to combat, I guess, the whole snowball mechanic within pro play is they've made Baron stronger, which is, and by making Baron stronger, I mean like taking Baron is more difficult now. So that means that doing the Baron dance within pro play of going on and off and toggling it and deciding between either attacking Baron or running against into the enemy to do, you know, a engage, that becomes harder because now Baron does more damage to, you know, the team that's trying to take it. So generally, usually the team that is ahead is usually trying to take Baron. And so even if you're 4K ahead or 5K ahead now, it's still really fucking hard to take Baron. Versus before, it was actually kind of quite easy. If you had a 5K gold lead, you could comfortably do the Baron dance and then either engage on the enemy or, you know, take the Baron itself or just wait until they fucking funnel in and then you kill them. But nowadays, Baron is actually like the 6.5 member, right? So now instead of a 5v5, now it's a 6.5 v5, right? So Baron is actually accounting for more than one champion now, which is pretty fucking crazy because before it was only counting as maybe half of a champion. So I just think that's kind of shitty. I don't think that Riot will embrace snowball mechanics because essentially what it is it's antithetical to their profits. Because, I mean, let's face it, Riot is owned by Tencent, which is owned by shareholders. And of course, shareholders want profit. When you look at their just even League of Legends as a whole, their champion balancing is how they balance champions is, first of all, they give a bullshit excuse of we're balancing this champion because we think these numbers are too No, it's because you just want to do it. And also you want to get rid of the most annoying champion. Whatever mechanic or however much damage that this champion is doing, or, you know, what kind of influence that they're having on the game, you want to make sure that that champion is as fun to play as possible, but as least annoying to play against. So something like Zed. Zed is a very sensitive champion, and they've said this in the past, that Zed is a very annoying champion to play against. And that's why they have to keep Zed down as far as like how powerful he is within the game, because he just pisses players off once he gets snowballing. So they have to keep Zed down in order to make the game enjoyable. A counter thing would be Janna. Janna is a champion that has historically a very high win rate. She's always sitting around like 53% win rate in solo queue. And that's because, guess what? No one fucking cares about facing against a Janna, right? It's not very annoying to face against a Janna. You don't feel like she's terrorizing solo queue or anything unless you're in Challenger. But, you know, she's not a bad champion and no one really bans her either. So you can see Janna is quite a good game, or quite a good champion as far as the balance team is concerned. So Riot don't want to balance her and, you know, bring her in line with all the other win rates. Now, I will reiterate that I do not think that you can solo carry in League of Legends anymore. I think it's very rare and it's very difficult, especially in solo queue, in order to do this. And I think one person essentially having fun versus 4 other people kind of having fun on your team and 5 other people definitely not having fun is antithetical to Riot's profits, right? Because that's saying, okay, well, now half the fucking people in the game are not having fun. League of Legends is not enjoyable. And theoretically, you're winning and losing about 50% of the time, maybe, you know, 51, 52% or something. So, and that's like 90% of the player base. So if that's the case, you're going to be losing a lot in League of Legends. So it better be an enjoyable type of thing. And one of the antithetical things to, you know, enjoying the game would then be solo carrying, because, well, only one person can do that. And the chances that you are going to be that one person is, you know, theoretically 10%. So I just think if Riot aren't careful with the whole comeback mechanics and stuff and mastery of the game, they will essentially take out what it is to be good at League of Legends. And I think that's very bad. And in the long run, it will be less enjoyable to actually master the game. And there's going to be less and less people that want to invest their time and actually truly master and play League of Legends for a very long time. And really all that you're going to get are transient people that play the game for a medium amount of time, and no one that actually puts in the hard yards in order to master the game of League of Legends.